standing in the face of madness.
Raoul Wallenberg's fight to save the Jews.
On the morning of August 4th, 1912, in Stockholm, Sweden, Raoul Gustav Wallenberg was born into a prominent Christian banking family. His education was guided by his paternal grandfather, who instilled in Raoul the importance of humanitarian responsibility.
He wanted him to become a world citizen of the world.
Wallenberg attended the University of Michigan, graduating in 1935.
Wallenberg then returned to Sweden and began to work in an export business owned by Koloman Laur, a Hungarian Jew. This job gave Wallenberg the opportunity to establish contacts and travel freely, making him aware of international developments, including the post-World War I political reconstruction in Germany.
In 1919, Germany had reluctantly signed the Treaty of Versailles, accepting responsibility for World War I. Germany's citizens desperately looked for someone to lead them back to a position of world prominence. A year later, Adolf Hitler assumed leadership of the newly formed National Socialist German Workers, or Nazi Party. Hitler's charismatic personality, combined with the economic chaos of 1929, fueled the Nazi Party's rise to power.
By 1933, Hitler was elected Chancellor of Germany and encouraged Germans to look for a scapegoat for their financial problems. He directed their focus towards the Jewish people, who the Germans perceived as holding a majority of the prominent business positions such as banking. Although discrimination against Jews was a new idea to some, Jewish people had experienced persecution throughout history, including in ancient Egypt and medieval Europe.
This harassment continued during the 1930s and escalated following Germany's invasion of Poland on September 1, 1939, signaling the beginning of the Second World War. Within a year, Jews began to be deported and sent to concentration camps.
It's very difficult with people who are living in a civilized society to comprehend that in 1944, people could in fact joyously participate in sending their neighbors to gas chambers.
Following the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, Germany, now allied with Japan, declared war on the United States. This polarized most nations into one of two camps, Allied versus Axis powers. However, a few nations, including Sweden, chose to remain neutral in exchange for Hitler's promise to respect their borders.
Over the next 3 years, the expanding war in Europe left more and more innocent people homeless, devastated by the horrors of warfare.
It is in my mind as indelible as September 11, 2001 is in the Americans' mind.
In response, President Franklin Roosevelt established the United States War Refugee Board in January 1944, which provided significant financial aid for anyone willing to take a stand and fight for
the victims of enemy oppression.
It became apparent to the War Refugee Board that a representative needed to be sent to Budapest, Hungary, to rescue the last remaining large population of Jews not already deported to concentration camps. The Swedish government took a stand by responding to that request. Koloman Laur, whose Hungarian relatives were affected by deportation orders, suggested his business partner, Raoul Wallenberg, as the perfect person for this position. At the age of 32, Wallenberg was young, single, and enthusiastic. Because of his extensive traveling and foreign contacts, he was adept at navigating the inner workings of political systems.
Wallenberg left for Budapest on July 6, 1944, with Swedish diplomatic immunity and the full financial support of the United States War Refugee Board.
The people he came to rescue had nothing in common with him except their humanity. He was a Swede, they were Hungarians. He was a Lutheran, they were Jews. He lived in safety and security and comfort, and they lived in health. And he came because morally he felt compelled to come. He felt that a situation like this cannot be tolerated.
What makes others stand up but others don't? How come there were so few Raoul Wallenbergs? That's the question we all have to ponder when we have to confront such evil.
When Wallenberg arrived in Hungary, the Nazis had begun to implement the final solution, an idea which focused on the total annihilation of European Jews. More than 400,000 Hungarian men, women, and children had been deported to concentration camps in Nazi-occupied Europe.
It was total horror. We all reacted to it as best we could just to stay alive.
Wallenberg realized he would need to manipulate the law in order to save the Jews. His first idea was to redesign and mass-produce Swedish safe passes, called Schutzpasses, which protected the bearer from deportation.
This piece of paper made us kind of into Swedish citizens.
Wallenberg distributed an estimated 22,500 passes, 3 times the authorized number allowed under Hungarian policy. Although there are those who argue that the ends don't justify the means, it was by forging these documents that he took a courageous stand to save the Hungarian Jews.
Wallenberg also acquired buildings to house and protect these new Swedish Jews.
Wallenberg leased a very large number of apartment houses in Hungary, in Budapest, put the Swedish flag on them, and claimed without any legal justification that these houses are under the protection of the Royal Swedish government.
He sheltered about 25,000 people in these apartment houses.
Wallenberg made sure that they were fed each day and that they received proper medical care.
Though Wallenberg had no true diplomatic power, the Nazis acknowledged his authoritative personality.
In spite of the basic nature of a modest, quiet gentleman, he could be and often was aggressive and demanding, which meant that in certain situations a holy charisma radiated out of his personality, which even amazed the Nazis.
With this perceived power, Wallenberg pulled Jews out of cattle cars destined for concentration camps and rescued people from death marches.
Wallenberg was on an open truck, holding a loudspeaker, screaming for everyone with a Swedish Schutzpass to come to him. It was not one trip. He came several times and saved thousands and thousands of Jews.
He was going to save every single person that he possibly could, giving priority to the children. He wanted to save the Hungarian Jew.
The Nazis had imprisoned Hungarian Jews in a ghetto, and in January of 1945, soldiers were ordered to annihilate these captives. When Wallenberg learned of this plot, he threatened the general in charge of the German secret police with death at the hands of the Russians, and the mass murder of 70,000 people was canceled.
Ironically, on January 17, 1945, shortly after the Soviet liberation of Hungary, Wallenberg was apprehended by the Russians and charged with espionage due to his association with people in Europe and the United States. He disappeared into the Soviet prison system. Wallenberg's fate remains a mystery.
The Holocaust was one of the most devastating events in history. Yet Raoul Wallenberg's ideas challenged Hitler's regime. Although there were others who took a stand against the Nazis, Wallenberg significantly impacted thousands of lives when he rescued over 100,000 Jews, nearly 1/6 of the Hungarian Jewish population.
And people and all the children and grandchildren that have come from them, certainly they wouldn't be here if not for this one individual.
Wallenberg has been granted honorary citizenship in 4 countries, including the United States. Wallenberg's courageous stand in history lives on through the people he rescued and through the numerous awards, monuments, and human rights organizations established in his name.
He encouraged others to step up and take a stand.
Rwandan Paul Rusesabagina, a Raoul Wallenberg Medal recipient, stated,
"I urge you, each and every one of you, to be a Wallenberg."
As long as oppression and persecution walk the face of this earth, Raoul Wallenberg should be a hero to any generation.
Whenever the face of madness again shows itself, we are called to stand and continue Raoul Wallenberg's fight.